Welcome back to today's show, where we spotlight the stories behind bold ideas and the people who bring them to life. Today's guest is someone who's not just building a brand, she's reshaping how women experience confidence, comfort, and self-expression. Through her company, Arrow, Tiana Rabden is changing norms and creating space for authenticity in an industry that often overlooks it. This conversation isn't about fashion trends. It's about purpose, resilience, and the power of designing with intention. Let's dive in. Hi, Tiana. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. So I was just stalking your website and I read the story about what inspired you to start this brand. Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. I really created this just from a need for myself. I was, I worked in the fashion industry in New York City. I'm actually in Los Angeles now. Right out of college, I used to spend a lot of money on clothes and silk tops, cashmeres. And as soon as I got to work, I would have wet marks in my armpits. And, I tried things again and again. I would just ruin clothes one after the other after sending them to dry cleaning. They would rip or they would have yellow marks. I just was ruining clothes and my sort of DIY solve at the time was just putting Kleenex or, trying to find pit pads. And I had heard Botox had worked and all those things, but nothing really worked. And really, it wasn't till years and years later. I actually owned a restaurant in La Jolla. So you'll realize I had like 9 lives. I've done a bunch of different things. But I wanted to wear this dress one night and it was a silk dress. And I knew it was one that as soon as I, got to the restaurant, I would have wet marks. And I'm like, let me see if I can figure something out here. So I tried a bunch of different ideas and I ended up cutting a t-shirt into a bolero and stuffing it into my bra. And I ended up wearing that all night and it didn't feel like I had anything extra on. It wasn't like extra padding, any of that, and it worked. So I took years after that just to try to figure out how I could create that on my own because I figured there's got to be a lot of people who have this issue. And interestingly enough, there just was nothing out there that was a good solve.
So you said something that just sparked a thought. You took years to bring this product to market. For those women out there who are thinking this creative idea, tell me what that journey looks like.
Sure. So I, you know, I owned the restaurant at the time. So that was my sort of entrepreneurial effort at the moment. And I had that restaurant for about 4 years. I had this in the back of my mind and I would tell people about it. So that was like the ideation was like a year or so before I even ended up going into trying to figure out how to make a pattern. I would kind of talk to some people about it and they're like, that's a really good idea. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to like draw this out and I'm going to find a pattern maker. So we moved to LA from San Diego and I went to the design district and I found a designer that could just create the pattern for me, sign NDA, all of that piece, because you have to think about that. You want to make sure nobody runs with it.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yes. And I hired this woman. She did the pattern for me. We created prototypes in downtown LA, just by putting together the bras that I really liked. I found like t-shirts that I loved the fabric and we just started putting it together and looking at different versions of it. And then once I thought it was in like a good place from the pattern where I could explain it to a designer that could maybe put me into like factory and had all of that background, I ended up just, looking on LinkedIn and trying to seeing if I could find someone. But I also want to say that at the same time, I was working in corporate. So I was working in the fashion industry still. I was working for another company and this was something I was just trying to get done on the side and bootstrapping it. So, the length of time that it sort of takes too is depending upon what you're doing as well. So I had ended up through sort of just meeting different people and designers. I was introduced to a woman, actually two women. They started their own company. They had expertise in lingerie. They had been in the industry for, 20 plus years designing bras. But then the other woman, who was her partner, did fabric technology for
Ooh.
Nike. So this was like a perfect combo for me. And luckily it was like the second person I met of trying to find somebody to help me with create this. So I ended up hiring them. And as soon as that happened, I decided to leave my corporate role and just go all in on this and start that sort of design process. So my husband's a finance guy, and he said, listen, you have a year, because he knows he put everything down on spreadsheets. This is how much the money's going to last. Get it going as much as you can, because he believed in it. He's my biggest supporter, which is amazing. I think that's who you need. You need somebody to kind of have your back through it. So I took that year and I just busted out the product development. I found a marketing strategist person to help me with creating the branding. Naming processes takes forever. And then by the end of that year, my husband said, okay, you need to start bringing in an income. Luckily, I was recruited by a company, and I started doing marketing for them. And I had, throughout actually that year, I also had found the fabric, I had created the product. I mean, it was very close to being ready to go. But then 2020 happened. So I was about ready to launch it. And I got hired so I can make an income, which was good. But then at that point in time, no one was wearing bras. And the fabric that I had originally, right? Like the fabric that had originally been created, that I was going to use after the focus group was no longer available in the mill. So I had to start kind of from square one. And that was 2018 at that point. So, or that was 2020 actually at that point. So I worked at, in my corporate company, and then I ended up just sort of like side hustling to get the product and fabric again correct. So that took a few years, but in the meantime, I also put the design into with a patent attorney just to make sure that I could get it patented, because I knew this was something like any bigger company could maybe get it done faster, get this, and really copy it. So I just wanted to make sure that before I talked about it anymore, that it could be patented. And also that it was a good enough idea and a true invention that I could say I own, so that when I launched it, it was something new and innovative out there. So.
Okay, that story was chock full of all sorts of lessons, resilience, how that road from through entrepreneurship it's not a straight plane.
It's not linear. Yeah.
No, not at all. So, some of the things I'd like to call out that you guys did really well. The support of your husband and the mapping out. Okay, this is how long the money will last. So many people do not look at the money when they're starting up a business. And then your just ability to re-envision things when you came upon a roadblock. The pandemic, I mean, who knew that was going to happen, right? And so then figuring out where you're going to get your product from, doing the NDAs. Oh my goodness. I interviewed somebody who was a jewelry designer, and her first line of jewelry that she created, somebody stole it because she was just trusting and talking to these people. And, the next thing she knows, she sees her designs out there. So a lot of people don't think about that as you're, enlisting people to support you in your journey. There absolutely does need to be NDAs. And then the patent. Oh my goodness. So I am blown away. Let me just say that. I am blown away. This is, even if it felt like a lot of challenges and took a really long time, this is a great story to inspire our listeners. How do you balance the creative vision? Clearly, you have that with the realities of running a business day to day.
You know, my background, interestingly enough, is from being in the fashion industry. I worked on the buying and merchandising side for years. So you learn about, you have to understand the product development piece. You have to have a creative mindset, but you also have to understand the economics. So I had sort of that experience going into this of knowing that, I also had started a couple of businesses prior, and I had a lot of lessons there too. I had started a clothing line with partners when I was in New York in my 20s, in between working in corporate. And I learned, like when you're saying like the NDAs and the legal stuff, I think from there, just having things not written down in the partnership, what is something that really I learned from knowing, one, going with the right people, or really, not just jumping into a partnership right away. I think, that was part of it. Yeah, understanding all those business sides from being even in the restaurant, there's the creative side and the business side. I think, I did that with a partner, my mother-in-law, whole other story, which was amazing. Some people will be like, "Oh my God, your mother-in-law." It was amazing.
Good.
She's the best. And it was a great lesson and learning for me. So she was very much more on the creative side and the food part, but I had to be this push on, okay, but does it make sense from a financial standpoint, like the menu and that piece? So I sort of was able to practice this throughout the years of that balance of the creative and the business side and being able to do both. And I love both. So I was always kind of like, my favorite subject in school was math when I was a kid, so, which is
Mine
interesting.
too.
I think it's because there's always like, it's problem solving, right? And I think there's always like an answer, or there's always a way to solve it. So it's fun. But then I also loved fashion growing up, and I was always like very creative with that in my self-expression. And so it's interesting that they had both those things to balance it. I wouldn't say like I am the best at either, but I do love that, and I understand the need for the balance.
I love that. I'm already a supporter just by the things I'm hearing you say. Tell our listeners how you came to name your company.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I will tell you, naming company the name is the hardest part of, I would say, a company. It is kind of in any it's just interesting to even think that. Um, but it's because it's just going to be with you forever, and you want a story behind it, but you want it to be authentic. And I had gone through it with the other companies I had before also, but I was trying to think of something that embodied just how I felt at the time as a woman, as a new mom, um, and coming out of corporate America. Um, my whole like ethos in general is just like women helping women, women empowerment. After becoming a mom, I think I realized really quickly how kick-ass women are, and how I would say like we are real life superheroes. Like, we create humans and we can do a million things at once. I love my husband to death, but he can do one thing at a time really well. Women, and I think this is true for most women, I want to, but we can do so much, right? And I think, how do I kind of embody that in a name? And my background, I'm half Italian, and so I was trying to think of words that maybe were not English. So I kept looking up stuff, and I was like, hero, and then Eero, which is eroi actually in Italian, means hero. And I was thinking about this one day, and I'm like, is this the right name? And I was driving my kids on their way to school, and one of them, I can't remember, I have twins, by the way. One of them says, Mom, can you play that hero song? And it was a song that we hadn't listened to forever. And it was that moment that I was trying to think, what is this the right name? And when they said that, I'm like, that is a sign. This is the name. And that's how it became. And then I put it through some, I put it through with my attorney just to see if we could trademark it. It was just recently trademarked, but I was able to do that, which is great. So that's another thing. I think I also, the other thing is like, you don't want it to be mean something in a bunch of different languages. You just have to look it up and make sure that it's clean everywhere. But yeah, that's how I came up with it.
Perfect. I saw that story on there. I was like, oh, yes. So you're building a community here of people. Can you tell me how this community helps drive the brand's growth and evolution?
Yeah, I mean, my goal in general, like I said before, it's like just women helping women and women empowering women. I just feel like there's, we should be each other's support systems. I think, some of the things that, happen, there could be competitiveness in some big companies and things like that, where um, I'm just a big supporter of making sure that um, there's a space that we are always, there for each other, knowing what each other are going through. So my hope is really just with this to kind of eventually have, some foundation, maybe that helps women get back into the workplace um, after becoming parents. So there's just a lot of ideas around the community that I'd like to build. I am still in startup mode. I think that there's just a lot of places that this can go. Um, First and foremost, it's selling the product and people loving it and people talking about it. I also don't like to take things too seriously. I like things to be silly and funny. And I don't know if you've seen like my Instagram, but I brought my identical twin sister who had been a stay-at-home mom for years, to, do marketing content with me and be a part of this. Especially because it being harder to get back into the workplace after that. I thought, come on, you're hilarious. Together we're funny. That I also want it to be a place where we aren't taking ourselves too seriously. Also,
Do your twins have that same sense of humor?
they do. And I have to tell you that it's so funny because it really comes from my dad. Like my sister and I talk about it all the time. Like my dad is the funniest person. And I don't know if I'm funny, but we think we are. And I try to bring that to my kids like every day. My dad used to wake us up in the morning singing like Santa Lucia, like wake up in the morning. I do that to them sometimes. Like we just are funny. Like everything's silly. And I think that was one thing, even just like my dad will say, he's like life's short. Like just, have fun.
Just have fun, enjoy it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, are the twins your only children?
Yes. Yeah. I
Okay.
started pretty late. Um, Years after, because I was in New York City. I was probably the only person of my friends that had a boyfriend at the time. This was like 2001. And nobody had kids until I moved to the West Coast. And so when I started late. And I remember telling my grandmother, like, I'm ready, but I'm not. And she's like, just have twins, you'll win. And when I found out I was having twins, I was so excited, and I have a boy and a girl. So um, I, yeah, I was like, I don't need to do this again. Let's go.
No, no. That second time, I have a niece who has two sets of twins. It's a
Oh my
lot.
God. Yes, it's a lot.
It's like, stop doing this. You don't need to go for six.
No, yeah, but it's funny because everybody's always says just about having twins. God, that must have been really hard. I think because they were my first, it's almost like what you don't know. It's like hard anyways, and you're just going to go for it. And I would say that honestly with entrepreneurship, it's almost good to not know what's coming.
Sometimes.
And right, I mean, I don't mean don't plan, but don't plan too far ahead because I think you could get some disappointment with things not working out the way you hope, where you just kind of have to like take one step at a time because you just don't know where that's going to lead you next.
Flexibility is
Yeah.
definitely important, and reading the signs and recognizing when, oh, this isn't working, I need to move in a different direction. A good business owner does that all the time, whether they're in startup mode or not. You
Yeah.
assess and determine, like, okay, I need to adjust this or that so that you
Yes.
remain profitable and successful and in alignment. So I like that. As you're building this brand, who's been your motivator? Who's been supporting and uplifting you?
I mean, my husband, 100%. My family in general has just always been like very supportive of just saying, like, go for it. But I have to say, I really like to make sure that I'm in a group of very like-minded sort of entrepreneur founders or people going through it. I do think it's so important to surround yourself with these people because they're going through it and you like want each other's motivation and understanding. I used to like take a walk on the beach every morning with one of my friends who is an entrepreneur, and I was just thinking about doing this. And I think just having the conversations, kind of calling yourself an entrepreneur before you are, just because it's like you're making yourself accountable that you're going to do it. I think was and talking about it and continuing to talk about it, continue to tell people about it. I think just helped me keep going in the direction of being like, okay, I've told all these people I'm going to do this. I better do this.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking it into existence before it actually gets here. So we are coming to our time, but before we go, Tiana, tell people, our listeners, how they can find you.
Yes, of course. So the website is shopero.com. So you can find all of our products there. It's bras and underwear. And then my Instagram is at Eero_brand, where you can find like a lot of information, a lot of fun videos. And we were on the Today Show, so there's a clip there that you can see a little bit more about the product.
And Arrow is spelled Eroe. We'll make sure
Yes.
that that's also in our show notes.
Yes.
Thank you for being here today. Your story reminds us that purpose isn't just a buzzword, it's a blueprint. And whether our listeners out here are designing product, building a brand, or navigating personal challenges, your story showed exactly how clarity of mission can shape those decisions. Tiana, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.